Hello and welcome to the Wolves Report. I'm Ryan Lester and thank you for joining us for episode 65, where tonight we'll do our best to analyse the Everton game, talk about the situation with Jimenez, Moutinho and Jonny. After the Guillem Balaguer's tweet today, we're going to discuss Lopetegui's future, also take your questions, part 3 of Who Am I? I can tell Nocky's looking forward to that, the ex-player quiz and looking ahead to Arsenal. This show would not be possible without the pundits and the skill of the others joining in. Club captain, ever-present Nocky, and we are delighted to be joined by BBC WM's football, phoning and soccer Saturday host Daz Hale. Good evening, gentlemen. An absolutely ram-packed show tonight. As always, the show is broadcast live. Your interactions, your comments are a really big part of the show. You can join in on Facebook or on YouTube. If they're clean, they're funny, or even if they're not, we'll get them up on the show and get you involved with the show as well. Let's kick things off on Saturday, the final home game of the season, where it ended Wolverhampton Wanderers 1, Everton 1. Daz, your thoughts on that game?
Good evening. Thanks for asking us back on again. I really thought that was pretty much a snapshot of our season, what we saw on Saturday. Again, the very fact that we've gone into these last few games with us being safe, I don't think we should underplay that, because we were all looking at the last few fixtures thinking, bloody hell, we don't want to have to get anything from them games, and we haven't had to. But again, the thing after the Brighton game, I think more than anything, I just wanted to see Wolves start competing again. They certainly did against Villa. I thought they did okay at Manchester United, and they really did stand up to Dyche ball, didn't they, for long periods of it on Saturday. Eventually, in the 325th minute of stoppage time, we cracked. But again, for me personally, we had a number of chances to finish them off. We didn't take them, which sums up the problem, not just of this season, of last season as well. And we are actually the lowest scorers in the top 5 divisions. Now, I know that in the Championship down to the National League, they play more games. We've got 31 goals, and it's only Forest Green Rovers who've got the same as us. And that, in a nutshell, is the problem. And we scored 38 last season, which again was dismal. But it looks like, well, we are now. We're gonna beat even that.
That's an absolute stinker. I mean, I didn't realise it was that bad, but Nocky, that says more, really. Trying to grab a positive from that. That says more for our defence. And probably new players like Lamina and Craig Dawson coming in. What a brilliant job they've done, as well as the manager.
Yeah, and I think Daz articulated the game perfectly. It was a game we should have won. We were the better side. We did create the chances, but we couldn't put them away, could we? And defensively, I thought we were good, but similar to probably the last 4 or 5 games, it was individual errors that have cost us again. I mean, the goal that we did give away, where the 9 minutes came from, I don't know, if I'm being completely honest, but there's still no excuse for the way that we conceded that goal. I think Núñez stands off him on the wing. He should be closing that space down. He doesn't. He allows him to cross the ball to the back post. No idea what we're doing from a goalkeeper point of view. It's a complete flap. And from there, it's, we're in trouble then, aren't we? It's 2 passes into the box and bang it. That's it. It's over. So, yeah, I mean, it is a story of our season. And Sean Dyche, he's got a bit of a hoodoo over us. I remember him coming down here with Burnley and giving us a right kicking 4-0. He's a manager that we do seem to struggle against the way that he plays, but we did stand up to it well, and I thought we were the better team. If we get that second goal, which I kind of thought we were going to, I felt like we had enough control of the match to get the second goal. At that point, Wolves are going to take the game away from them, but there's been a lot of occasions this season where we've left points on the pitch because we couldn't kill teams off. It's not a new issue for us, and I didn't realise goal scoring wise how poor we were. But you can see why we've been in the position we're in this season. But I think when you look at it, the bigger picture, we were definitely safe with 3 games to go. We were basically safe with 4 games to go. So all in all, you've got to be delighted with what we've achieved. But if you look at us overall, you can see where those issues are that we've got to get resolved over the summer one way or another.
I mean, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but we're here to tell the truth. I don't think I've seen a team as poor as Everton at Molineux this season.
Yeah, agreed.
They came to spoil, they came to stop the time waste, and I could understand that other way around. I think Wolves are probably doing the same, Daz, but even though it was a meaningless game, I still feel disappointed. I know you've mentioned it then. If you leave the door open at 1-0, there's always a chance regardless. And we nearly saw that last night with Leicester nearly managed to pinch a goal at Newcastle, which would have been crime of the century football-wise. But if you don't finish games off, you're going to get punished eventually.
Yeah. I mean, in commentary, we said we thought the 9-minute stoppage time was 5 minutes for Saturday and the 4 minutes left over from the Villa games. Still don't know why Atwell only played 3 minutes in that one.
Yeah, that's true.
So that one evened itself out a little bit. But we all know what Dyche does, and it may well just be enough to get them over the line. Again, I wonder what their supporters will think about having to watch that every week next season if they are in the Premier League, because there's one thing, firefighting, which is what we've done to a degree. And actually, that style of football, I'm not being snobby, there's more than one way to win a football match, there's more than one way to play a football match, but it really is just pretty basic Route 1 stuff, isn't it? And we do struggle against it, and that's, fair play to him. I'm not criticising them, but it's not exactly, it's not exactly easy on the eye, is it?
Well, actually, I thought Wolves coped quite well, and as I think one of you guys said then, in terms of coping with Dyche ball, that's the best we've done it. Max stood up and was quite strong. Dawson, minimum 7 out of 10 every week. If it's not a slight error from the keeper that's cost us a goal, but the problem is if you make an error in goal, it usually costs you a goal. So it's highlighted more as if you make a mistake up front or in midfield.
What I would say though is when Calvert-Lewin was on the field, he had 3 chances, 2 free headers. So he's their Chris Wood, isn't he? If you know what I mean. But when he went off, and they brought Damari Gray on, then I think we cut pretty easy until they threw the centre halves up top in stoppage time. When, again, they were always going to do that, weren't they?
Lockie, there's a few eyebrows raised at the start of the game in terms of the team selection itself. Now, it was a surprise to me. I know Tyler was quite keen on it. It was a 4-2-3-1. It looked potentially like it was quite fluid, but there was no target man. I mean, I don't know what message that is, whether he was having a look at other people, whether he was giving games before they were departing. I don't know. What did you make of the selection?
I thought the formation was right. I've been crawling out for 4-2-3-1 all season. I think that's how we get the best out of the players we've got. I think if you look at the Raul Jimenez situation, then you could probably rule out he was giving players game time. I think he was looking at players who potentially could be here next season. I know there's talk around Daniel Podence started, but he's one who may be here next season, despite all the conversations around him. And if you look at Hwang through the middle, it's not where I think he should be playing, but he had a really good game. I thought the pace, the work rate, just the general energy he brought, it caused them all kinds of trouble. And it was Jonny on the spot for the goal, wasn't he? It doesn't matter if you tap him in from a yard or from 45 yards, a goal's a goal. So I think it worked. I do think it worked because we kept him out, for 100 minutes basically. But looking at the squad we've got there, there's a lot of work needs to be done, and I do think a lot of those players will go. I think, was it a shop window job? Was it just assessing, having a final look at the players to think, I can bring you, I can't bring you? It was a different selection than I was expecting, but I think it was a selection that he brought out there thinking he could win the game.
It's interesting the point you made there about Wang, though, is if you think back to his last 3 or 4 goals now, they've all been tap-ins. And why are they tap-ins?
It's an art.
He's standing around 6-yard box between the posts. Who'd have thought it? That might be a way to score a goal rather than having your centre forward over on the left-hand side or 20 yards out. And I thought that was his best game in a Wolves shirt, actually, leading the line. And he stood up to the challenge. And I don't think he's the long-term answer, but he is like the fox in the box. And that's something that we don't have.
I think when you look at Haaland, sorry, Ryan, I didn't mean to jump in there, mate. But if you look at Haaland, I'm not in no way, shape or form comparing Hwang to Haaland, but you don't see him at 25 yards into the net. No. He's in the penalty area. He knows where the ball's going to drop and he scores. He runs near post, he runs far post, or he'll hold on the edge and make his running late. But he knows where that ball's going to drop. Your best strikers, that's what they do. Steve Bull, he used to tap in goals from 5-6 yards because they have an idea where it's going to be, and I just think he did that really well for us. And it was a good performance, and I agree with Des. I think it was his best performance. I think he caused them all kinds of trouble defensively, especially with that just that pace that he had. I mean, Costa's very kind of, what he's going to do. He's going to run in straight lines. He's going to try and bully you. He's going to physically try and intimidate you. Whereas Hwang, he can run both channels. He can run through the middle. He can drop back inside. So it caused him a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it's interesting with Hwang. I don't think he's technically the most gifted player, but being in the right place at the right time is a skill. There's players that have made a whole career out of it, and just goal scoring is the most important thing in the game. And I'm pleased for him. Hwang's never hid. He's never complained. And what Hwang does, I think, best is without the ball. He does all the dirty work, the pressing, the hard work. He's such a reliable team player. You can see why someone like Lopetegui would put someone in like him who they can trust, because he defends from the front. You press the centre-backs, press the keeper, squeeze the ball, make the players play the ball long. He's someone that you can trust. As I think you said, he's probably not the answer going forward, but of all the forwards at Wolves now, he's probably one that you think, well, actually, the manager trusts him more than the rest. I wouldn't be surprised to see him more next season than would be the likes of Podence. Someone else does, who, if you get through that pint of wine tonight before the end of the show, I'll be really impressed. Someone that really, really impressed me, who has split the fan base, who's probably going to be departing, was Adama Traore. His run reminded me of the run he did against Seville in the quarterfinal of the Europa League. I don't know why we don't see him picking the ball up there. Pick the ball up off the centre midfielders or the centre backs and drive. You can't stop him in that position. I don't know why we've not seen him. I'm not saying he's a number 10, but when he collects the ball from there, players are flying at him, they're bouncing off him, and there's space all over the place. And because of that, we got a goal. It's a real shame. I think he has frustrated, but in that position, you can win a free kick, yellow card, make an assist or get a goal himself. I don't look. The more I see that, the more I think we've played him in the wrong position.
It's look, and you think about Manchester City away as well, but then he's
down the middle
2 goals, and I know. But and Lopetegui said after the game that he'd like him to stay. Well, I think the contract's been on the table in different forms for the last 2 years now, but nobody else could have scored that goal on Saturday. And when you see that, you remember just how good he is. In fact, in the first 10 minutes, he put 2 crosses into the south bank after skipping past the fullback. That's Adama Traore.
Hard to cross at 400 mile an hour, does.
Yeah, and I am the most Vic, I just change my mind every week on the bloke. I've been doing that for years. This week I love him again, but in another week, do you know what I mean? So obviously, if they could come to get decent terms with him, he would be someone who, I say obviously, you'd still like to keep, but I'm not so sure he'll still be at Molineux next season.
Well, I mean, Napoli have held a long interest. They've won the Italian league. They'll be playing Champions League football. It's not quite as fast moving in Italy, and maybe that game will suit him when he gets to use his best weapon there. So something that's tickled me on the comments. Ricochet has put in, Tyler's done a Moutinho. No, he hasn't been dropped from the match day squad. He had to do something else this evening. Thank you as well, Kishan. Tyler's going to love this. All the people messaging, where's Tyler? It was supposed to be
him on for the last 5 minutes.
I'm afraid he's not turned up to the stadium. So it was going to be a quartet. It's now a trio. Tyler will be back soon, but thank you for asking, and all is okay with Tyler. Yeah,
like Morgan Gibbs-White then, giving evidence.
Why would you do what evidence? It's hard to give evidence if there isn't any, Daz.
Don't you swear on this show, Daz?
Don't come here to bring in that. Just your take quickly, Nocky, before we move on regarding Adama Traore.
I think he's great, and he probably was almost as affected by the Jimenez injury as Jimenez was, because they had such a good connection, they had such good link-up play, and it was nothing majorly scientific. He got down the byline and put the ball in the penalty spot. Jimenez knew where the ball was going to be, so they had such a good connection, and we didn't replace Jimenez, as we know, so Adama was still making those runs. He was getting into those positions, and he will, he will put one into the car park every now and then. But you know that he's still got the ability to pick those crosses, and he still excites you. And it's not having a centre forward, it really affected him. In terms of him staying, I'd love him to, but I don't see any chance that he will now, because he's going to get offers with big money, because it's going to be a free transfer, so the sign-on fee is going to be immense, but mainly because he doesn't start at Wolves, and he's going to want to go somewhere now and play football. He's going to want to be a regular starter. He can't guarantee that playing at Wolves, and you can only see him being an impact player. So as much as I've enjoyed him, and he's probably the most exciting player I've ever seen at the club, realistically, you wish him well, and I hope he has enjoys the rest of his career, and kind of I hope someone can find a way to unlock the real potential that's in Adama Traore, because there's another 25-30% that we haven't seen yet. I think he's a quality player, but no one's managed to quite hone that raw pace, ability, skill, and delivery, and just roll it into one phenomenal player. Because if there was, and he'd be Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man City, he'd be all the top clubs would be after him. But I wish him well when he goes, but I'm pretty convinced he will go.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
He's 25 now, and he's 25, 26. I have to get a move on. I also think he missed Matt Doherty as well, because those two had some really good up and down sort of.
He did work on that side,
which he's never quite replicated with Semedo, has he? So
the system was simple, though, wasn't it? You get the ball to Connor Cody. Connor Cody hits Jonny, or he hits Doherty. Adama makes his run. You feed the ball through to Adama, across to Jimenez, bang. That was a simple system that no one knew how to stop because of the pace and ability we had. And if you look at Doherty, he was never blessed with pace, but he was probably one of the best players I've seen at the club
in terms of timing.
For tiptoeing into positions and just being where he needed to be. And all those players, you're absolutely right, Daz, that affected him the same as Jimenez did.
Just to make it a correction, I was looking, as I always do, at my notes, and I realised that Max Kilman didn't play. So I said he did at the start of the show. Obviously didn't play. That's on me. If I don't make one mistake a week on the show, it shows I'm not human. So apologies, and thank you for those correcting me. Obviously it was Collins and Dawson, and it was Collins defensively was okay. Just concern me with the. I don't think we get used to Kilman on the ball, who's quite tidy. Collins doesn't seem that kind of player, but It's hard to get over-involved with that game in a game that doesn't really mean anything for us, but I'd still like to win. What I would like to say, though, is I thought the atmosphere at Molineux on Saturday, again, for a game that didn't really mean anything, was good. Now, this sort of brings us into the next section, because there's not much of the game to talk about, really, but talking about the Jimenez situation, talking about the Moutinho situation and Jonny, this was a day that I thought would be an ideal farewell. We talked about it on the show before. Last 5 minutes, last 10 minutes, Jimenez coming on, round of applause, singing the song. He got his moment with the South Bank and the rest of the stadium at the end, and it really seemed to have split a fan base. What's your take, Daz, on the Jimenez situation and how he wasn't used as a sub?
By the way, atmosphere-wise, I was speaking to a Villa player last week as well, and they were saying how taken aback they were by the atmosphere at Molineux when we played them a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, I get, look, Lopetegui said afterwards, maybe I should have put Raul on. And listen, every place you finish higher up that league, you get more money, don't you? So he said, I was in game mode, and I absolutely agree that Raul, should have put him on. If he had to come on and we'd let that late goal in, he'd have been slaughtered for why you're being over sentimental, for bringing players on Jonny's been a great servant. His legs have gone, unfortunately, in my opinion, after those two operations. It's just a shame, but at least they had the opportunity to do the lap of honour at the end, the ones who turned up. And who's to say that he won't get some game time at Arsenal on Sunday? Admittedly, it's not the same because it's an away game, but no, I mean, I get it and I hear it, but it was still a special moment, I think, with the fans afterwards were still able to, give their appreciation then. So at least there was that. But otherwise, I've not like any sleep over it either way, I'm afraid.
Well, Nocky, I know we've talked about this heavily behind the scenes, and probably not in as a polite mode as you're about to articulate yourself in now. But the most emotional I felt that day was when Neves went off. That there was there's the poster boy, and that's the end of an era, and I wish him well. I'm confused about the Jimenez situation, and the word is that obviously neither Jonny or Moutinho turned up, and if that's their choice, I don't think that's good enough. Now, you've done well, you've played well, you've obviously Jonny's lost a yard of pace, as Daz said, through injuries. He's given his all for Wolves. Moutinho's played the most club games he has for any club at Molineux. And they're two players that are heavily respected and loved by the fans. Jimenez got what he deserved at the end of that game. You could see what it meant to him. You could hear around the stadium. I stayed for the start of it, then I went, but you could hear the singing and the appreciation afterwards. And it was really nice. Those two players, not just they didn't deserve it. They deserved it. But the fans deserve to say their thank you as well. And I think fans have missed an opportunity by two players, whether they've thrown the toys out, whether they don't fancy it. I don't think it's good enough.
Yeah, as far as the Jimenez one goes, I know there's been a huge reaction from Wolves fans, some really strange stuff thrown towards Lopetegui in terms of he should have brought him on. For me, there's no room for sentiment in football. It's about winning. It's about getting points. And he was always going to have that opportunity to do the lap of honour, and that's going to be probably more intimate than a 5-minute cameo. And a 5-minute cameo coming on and not really affecting a game, which he probably wouldn't have done with the greatest respect, because we all know the level he's currently playing at. That's not going to affect his legacy either way. We wouldn't feel any differently about Jimenez if he'd have come on the pitch or off the pitch. So I think some of the comments were a little bit daft. We've got players like Cunha, we've got players who we think are going to be there next season, who we want more exposure, we want more game time, we want them to be on the pitch. And I've seen so many pelters for that decision to not bring him on, but yet I've seen absolutely nothing towards Moutinho and Jonny, who have really shortchanged the fans, refusing to come and do that lap of honour. So I'm a little bit confused as to why they've got off the hook in a sense, and there's no kind of questions asked of them as to why they didn't bother turning up for the fans who've lauded them for the last 5 or 6 years. So I've got no issue with the team selection. Lopetegui's going to be here next season, Raul's not. So as far as I'm concerned, I'll back the manager on that one. I think he picked a team that he wanted to win the football match. He picked a team he wanted to have a look at. I think if we'd have got that second goal, Jimenez would have come on the pitch. But we all know the situation we're in with financial fair play. Every point is a prisoner now, because every point we're up that league, we can get another position. That's another £2 million that gives us more opportunity to build. So I think he did the right thing in the sense that he tried to close the game out. He tried to win the game. Okay, it didn't work out for us, but as Daz rightly said, we bring Jimenez on the pitch, and then if Jonny and Moutinho are available, we'll bring them on, and bang, they get the equaliser. He's going to get absolute pelters from the Wolves fans. So for me, he put the club before sentiment, which is what I expect from a manager.
Well, this is it, Daz. This is you don't win. You don't take Seville to Champions League spots in Spain. You don't win a Europa League trophy. You don't take like the Spanish under 21s to glory. You don't manage Real Madrid and Spain if you've not got a ruthless streak. And this was an example to all of us and to the fans. This guy does not mess around.
And
he
also,
sees what's best. Yeah. For the club.
Also, if Nuno was still in charge, he'd have probably understood a little bit more about the history. This bloke's been here 6 months. He ain't seen. I mean, he'd have watched it from afar like everybody else around the world, but he wouldn't really appreciate the history and the bond. And why would he? Because he hasn't seen anything from him since he's come in. In fact, in his very first press conference, when he was unveiled, without any prompting, I hasten to add, I was there with Mike Taylor, my colleague at BBC Radio WM, and pretty much out of the blue, and I paraphrase, he said, "Oh, by the way, like, Raul needs to remember that Wolves pays wages, not Mexico." And he had to go at him then, and he was unhappy then with his attitude. And obviously there was all that stuff about him not training at Wolves and spending time in Mexico to try and get fit for the World Cup. So since he's come in, that's all he's seen. So again, maybe he didn't quite understand until afterwards the relationship really between the supporters. He might not give a monkeys either way anyway, but I think you've got to just put that in the mix, that he probably didn't quite understand the bond between the supporters and certain players.
Yeah, as Nocky said, I don't think the manager could win either way, because you bring them players on and Everton equalise. Oh, what did you do that for? You don't bring them on. Oh, you're spiteful. You're doing it on purpose. I mean, the people, Raul got his moment, and the whole stadium, you could hear, it was nice. He deserved that moment, and clearly it meant a lot to him. He could have lost his life playing for Wolves. Luckily, he's got a good standard of life again. He's going to go on and play elsewhere now, and good luck to him. Was the most complete number 9 I'd ever seen play for Wolves, and he was absolutely brilliant. And who knows what would have happened, but the main thing is he's okay. He got his goodbye. I wish him nothing but the best. I've got nothing against Moutinho or Jonny. I just think they've cost themselves. I don't know if it's something to do with falling out with the manager. I don't know, but the fact they've both decided not to come to that game is incredible.
Neto.
Yeah, and Neto. That's really, really disappointing. Really disappointing. I think, is there more going on behind the scenes? Do things run deep? Obviously, they're both not going, but you know what? People have sang your name in the stands. They've travelled into Europe to watch you. They've sang your name. They've supported you. What, you're going to spend your afternoon just give people a little clap because they're? I'm disappointed. But moving on from that, Guillem Balagay's news today, and I know local journalists have tweeted it and talked about it, but when something like this comes from the manager's mate, who he's friends with, probably one of the closest people he's into the media, it's a concern. Nocky, your take on this sort of bubbling up of financial fair play struggles at Molineux and the potential of Lopetegui not getting his way and something unpleasant could happen?
Whole thing feels really strange to me. I mean, we spent a hell of a lot of money last summer. We bought in a lot of players. We then had to go again in the January window because obviously the position we're in. So there's been a lot of money thrown around. He must have known that before he arrived. So I'm curious as to what exactly he was expecting, whether there was promises made that we're not aware of by Jeff and his team. I don't know, but we don't know the ins and outs of it. I don't claim to be an expert on financial fair play, but for me, there's going to be a lot of players going. So surely the amount of players going in terms of wages, in terms of player sales, I mean, Neves is going to bring in a minimum of 30 million. You would assume Guedes is going to be sold. We're probably still going to get somewhere in the region of 20 million for him. Yeah, that's two players. There's going to be a lot more go. The wages of Moutinho.
Ain't Podence.
Potentially Semedo. I know I've extended the contract, but that's, that avoids us losing him on a free. I think there'll be lots of players go. So there's going to be money available. So there's almost a little part of me that thinks, has he had offers somewhere else and this is his out to go because it's a nice, easy, you promised me something you didn't deliver, I can walk away, my reputation's intact. I don't know. I just think his people must have known that this was going to be a situation, especially when we're throwing around, 90 million in January? You've got to have a little level of reality on that. I don't like financial fair play, especially when you see Chelsea throwing 600 million around and the situation Everton are in with what seems to be no punishment, and Man City, I'm sure they'll get away with it as well.
Man United nearly $1 billion in debt. Real Madrid nearly $1 billion in. Barcelona nearly $1 billion in debt.
Exactly, and we're in the black, aren't we? So it's a very strange situation to be in. But there's a part of me that thinks there's something else behind it because he must have known. He's an intelligent guy with intelligent people around him. So the fact that it's suddenly taken him on the hop, it could be a tactic from him to try and get more of an investment from Fosun, to try and get some more external investments in, and pushing that kind of narrative that if you don't back me, I'm going to walk away. There could be a little element of that, but there's just a little sneak in the back of my head that thinks he's got something else lined up.
Daz, how has this come as a surprise to Lopetegui? How is financial fair play now suddenly been spouted out left, right and centre from now international journalists? Where's this all come from?
Well, it's been talking about the need for investment for quite a few weeks now. Even in his programme notes on Saturday, now it's key to know the economic future of the club, where we can go, and the aim we will be working towards. Or next season, we know we're going to have to invest if we are to achieve greater things. He even put that in his programme notes. Now, I think that's the question, that when he took the job, didn't someone say to him, this is the situation? Or was it, and Nocky's touched on it there, that now obviously the club has been watched very closely, hence the having to be very careful with the net spend over the last 3 seasons after we got into Europe. So they're on our case. They're watching us. So first of all, FFP, it's not an excuse. It's not a lack of ambition. How can you accuse a club of lack of ambition? Who spent 100-odd million last summer, didn't spend it very well. And then January comes along, and as you've touched upon there, they've committed to 80-odd million if you include Cunha. Now, I think it's fair assumption to think that last summer, when they spent the 100-odd million, and they did get money in for Gibbs White and Dendoncker and whatever, but they still spent over 100 million. At that point, in no way did they think, well, we're having to spend another 80 million in January. Now, when he went to them and said, this is what I need, after he'd watched them during the World Cup, maybe even then. So look, Fosun then backed the manager. Wolves stay up, and I think largely to do with the players he brought in. You've mentioned the likes of Dawson and Lamina, to a lesser extent, João Gomez as well. He also brought in Dan Bentley. All of these players, really big personalities in the dressing room, because after the others challenged Bruno Lage, Cody, Saiss, Bolly, amongst others, They were all thrown out the door. They all had to go. And John Ruddy, another one, another big personality. So it was a very quiet dressing room. It was a team lacking in confidence. It was a very quiet team, and we could all see where it was going. So they spend the 80 million, dig them out of trouble. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If they didn't do it, if they just stood by and watched Wolves get relegated, there'd be riots now. Why didn't you back the manager? Why did you just stand by?
Well, not only
the
that,
manager would have walked anyway.
Not only that, the club's probably worth now approximately £400 million as a Premier League club. You get relegated, it's probably worth 100 million.
Yeah. But if Wolves had gone down, there'd be a break clause, they'd shake hands, it'd be gone. They've backed him to keep us up. He's done it. It's been brilliantly the way he's done it. But what Nocky's mentioned there, so listen to this. If it becomes now, obviously now, there has got to be a balancing of the books. And I'm not quite sure how accurately all this has been reported, because I think that there could be a little bit of smoke and mirrors going on as well. Because let's just go through it now. You've mentioned Neves, right? They'll get a decent transfer fee for Neves. More importantly, he's just as important, his wages. He's one of the big earners, yeah? Moutinho is the top earner at the club. He's going. Raul is a big earner. He's going, plus they'll get a fee of some sort for him. Jonny is another big earner. He's going. Podence is a big earner. He'll probably go. Guedes, you've mentioned, is a big earner. They'll get money for him as well, or he'll go out on loan somewhere. Sarabia may well go for a fee. He'll be off the wage bill. Nunes, Jose Sarr, Adama is earning a shed load of money. He wants more. He'll probably walk away. Diego Costa's not cheap. So are they going to keep him? He'll walk away. Connor Cody. They'll get £5 million for Connor Cody, which I think is underpriced, but nonetheless, he's a big earner. He'll go. Pedro Neto might go. And then you've got the lads who've come through the academy. Every penny they get for them will be profit. If they sell Dion Sanderson, if they sell Ryan Giles, then you've got the likes of Hoover, who's on loan at Stoke. He'll probably go for $1 million or two. He'll be off the wage bill. So all of a sudden, I haven't done the maths here, but you're not far off probably £1 million a week in wages that they're going to be saving. So you're telling me then that they won't be able to put together so what is the transfer fees? So if they rake in 40 or 50 or 60 million in transfer fees and save nearly £1 million a week in wages, they'll be fine in putting together a competitive squad next season, because that's my opinion. So maybe there's just a little bit of games going on here, a little bit of poker.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we spent the summer budget on hiring Daz Hale for this week's and episode 65.
Sauber as well.
We have to get Tyler back next week. We're blowing a budget.
Now, as we talked about, Nocky, Wolves had no choice. There's no way Lopetegui was coming in to take over without no initial investment. Wolves would probably have got relegated. Dawson, Lamina, the key players for me. But the one that's an interesting one for me is he's spending 40 million and committing to that on Kuna. Now, it came out of sort of nowhere. It was a bit of a sub kind of player, and I think he's going to be good, but it didn't strike me as a player that was oven ready to come battling into the Premier League and score us goals.
I like him, but he's not a goal scorer, is he? I mean, if we play him every game next season, if he gets 6 or 7 goals, I think that'll be a good return for him. He's just not a goal scorer. So it was a strange signing. He's clearly a talented lad. I mean, we've seen some of the runs he's been on and the ability he's got. But for the position we were in, we needed a striker. We needed a natural goal scorer. Okay, we got away with it. But when you look at the central strikers, we've got Jimenez, Klasinic, Costa. There's 1 goal between them all season, which just simply isn't good enough. So he was a strange signing for us, but I do think there's a quality player there. And I think if we get a proper number 9 in, and for me, as much as I like Diego Costa, he's out the door for me. I think that there's no point keeping him on 60, 70 grand a week, whatever he's on. He's not going to add enough to the team. So I think if we get a proper striker, maybe even a Fabio Silva, if he's improved enough, but my suspicion is we'll need somebody else, someone to play with him, bring him through, make those movements for him. I think you'll see a good player with Cunha playing just off a striker, but it was a hell of a lot of money that we paid for him, wasn't it? Let's be completely honest. It was a lot of money.
Yeah, and surely when you've already spent a bundle in the summer, you kind of know that 40 million is probably going to be taken away from your summer budget. You can't just keep spending, and that's why FFP is there. So I'm still confused why it's all coming out. Just something here from Adrian Richards. I'm not going to go through this, Adrian, because I've literally quoted someone else's tweet. I've got a rough understanding. Craig Spillard, that is really, really good with numbers, has done a tweet and a breakdown on financial player play for Wolves. I've quoted it in my last tweet, apart from the one on the podcast. So if anyone wants to look at that and ask any questions on there, I'm sure Craig will answer them. I roughly understand it, but I'm not confident enough to talk through that on Adrian. That's why I've copied someone else's work and posted it on, just to share his good work, really. So yeah, just trying to be transparent there. Quick poll survey then. Will Lopetegui be the manager come the first game of the season next year, Daz Hale?
No.
Wow. Nocky?
Yes. Yeah, I think he will.
I hope he is.
I hope he is.
Wolves chased him for 6 years, didn't we? We've chased him for 6 years. I mean, surely when you've put all that work in, you've seen what he's capable of doing, you see the results that he's got us. We talk about Cunha being a strange signing. It worked because we're still in the Premier League, so it was the right decision. Surely you don't chase a manager for 6 or 7 years and then let him walk away over a financial fair play issue. So for me, I think they'll work something out. I think he'll stay.
If he's still here this time next week, I think he'll be here come the start of the season.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, yeah.
So, well, because really, now we know the work for next season should have started the moment there. The likes of Alex Scott, who we've talked about a lot, fantastic centre midfielder, can play attacking midfielder, holding midfielder, can play right. That kind of player that's been on our radar, we can't be missing out on those kind of targets.
You've got the deciding vote here, though, Roy.
Yeah. Why would you do that to me when I'm trying to distract you?
It's 1-1 here.
Where's Tyler when you need him? He's absolutely done me.
He's at Lopetegui's house. He's got his tent out and some boards. Please stay.
I think he'll be here. I don't see this guy. This guy insisted on all his staff moving to the area with their families here. I don't see them doing that for a 6-month project. I think he'll get his way. I think he knows he's got Wolves over a barrel. It's a little bit naughty, but look what he's achieved. Now, this brings me into something that's amused me. We was having a DM with somebody. They've not put it as a question, but I'm going to read it out to you two. Just playing devil's advocate here. Devil's advocate in reference to the manager. Is he that good, or was it Large was that bad and any half-decent manager would have kept us up anyway? Nocky, you can have that one first.
I think going from 10 points, 4 points from safety, up to 40 points with 3 games to play, I think you can't do that if you're a bang average manager. I think he's good, and I think he's a quality manager. You can see that by what we've achieved since he's been here. So for me, yes, Large was poor that second season, but I think the turnaround's been phenomenal. I don't think there's too many managers could have done that.
Daz?
He's a very good manager because he's got an aura about him, and he came in and he cleared up one hell of a mess where all the discipline had gone. There was no respect for the last guy. Confidence had gone. And to turn it around with something to spare, what I would say is he hasn't kept a clean sheet away from home. We've only kept one clean sheet away from home all season. That was Bournemouth after they just got beat 9. He needs to look at the away. If he's here next season, then he needs to work out a better way of playing away. He's 1-2. So he's 1-2 in 11 away matches, which is nowhere near good enough. So that's something going forward. But again, top managers will adapt. And I think up to now, it's been a case of, we used the term before, I think we talked about firefighting. He's come in, he's done his firefighting bit, he's kept them up. And now that's his point. He's now, I've done that. I don't want to be doing that again next season. We need to move on now. We need to progress. And that's now he wants to put his own identity on the team. And he, and somebody tweeted before that you only have to look at like the mess Leicester are in. And I think another example would be actually the team we played on Saturday, Everton, who 12 months ago stayed up on was it the final day or the week before?
Yeah, I think it was the final weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah. And they haven't, I know they've spent a lot of money the last few years, but they haven't really invested in the last 12 months. And look, they're back at it again, needing to stay up on the final day. That's the warning. But again, you've got to be able to stay within the rules to do it. I think you're financial fair play wise.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I sit in the middle typically, and then
splinters.
Yes, absolute splinters. I sit in the middle on that because Bruno Lage, I think, he obviously did a brilliant job at Benfica, but he came here. I think he made some really tough decisions earlier on. He decided that Coney couldn't play in a 4. I agree with him. And obviously, I don't know what was going on with Gibbs White at the start. They played him, they tried, they just couldn't convince him, and they sold him. So I think he made some tough decisions that will, who knows whether right or wrong going down the line. But I don't think he was particularly great. I mean, what the concern is when Lopetegui came in about the fitness of the players and just everything had seemed lost. And like, how does a manager let it slip so far over such a long period of time? Anyway, let's move away from that and we can start on this week's episode of Who Am I? Nocky v Daz Hale.
Have you got a jingle or some music for it or anything?
It doesn't warrant him. It doesn't deserve it.
Would you like some music for it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me see what we can do then.
Who are you?
No, let's have a bit of. How's that for you?
I was going to say we haven't got the budget for the Who, mate. We've got to go with this.
No, not yet. So, who am I? It's an ex-Wolves player, obviously. I'll read out clues. Once you've shouted in, if you're wrong, the next person gets the other person gets the next question. So here we go. Who am I? I played for Bolton and Rochdale earlier in my career. I have 53 career goals so far.
Bolton.
So far, so he's still playing.
I scored 6 goals in 16 appearances for England under 21s.
Dawson.
Daz Hale.
He called it.
How on earth have you got that? Wow.
I remember he used to take a lot of penalties for England under 21s.
He said the answer, we still haven't got it. It's just flown in.
Right, I'm going to read out the rest of the clues. This is incredible. The next one was I played for the Great Britain Olympic team in 2012.
Dawson.
I played in the Premier League for 4 different clubs. I've accumulated 74 yellow cards in my career. I still have a chance of receiving a winner's medal for a major honour this season. That was my favourite clue. I've been teammates with Serge Gnabry, Danny Welbeck and Mikel Antonio. And I've made my most appearances for Brom. Craig Dawson. Well done, Daz Hale.
Dawson.
And here we go. Here we go. Look at Nocky's devastated.
He didn't say Craig, so that's half a point.
What, Les?
Round 2 of Who Am I?
I don't want to play. I'm embarrassed.
Well, you got 2 last week and you beat Tyler. Let Daz have a go. Goodness sake.
That's Tyler. We've up to level now.
I have played for Sheffield United, Tranmere and Mansfield. I have 9 goals in 26 international appearances. 606 club appearances. I have 194 goals. I've won the championship twice, but it wasn't called the championship then. I scored 28 goals. No, next question's for you, Nocky. Ooh, I've been teammates with Andy Cole, Paul Kitson and Paul Ince.
It's not Kevin Doyle.
Oh no, onto you, Daz. I've scored 28 goals in my best goal scoring season. The floor's open again now, and this is going to start getting a bit close to home now. When I joined Wolves in 1993, it was for 750 grand.
Not David Connolly.
Oh, Daz has done it again. David Kelly. Next clue is my international country is Ireland, and the last clue, my dad's favourite goal for Wolves. I scored a famous diving header for Wolves in a 1-0 win over victory over Leicester City in the FA Cup in 1995.
That's my favourite goal at Molineux.
It's a wonderful goal. It's a wonderful goal, isn't it?
Knocked it wide to Goodman, and then
he turned in
and then sprinted. It's his old club as well, wasn't it? Of course.
Yeah, he turned away from him, fed it to Goodman. The pitch was like a pudding on it, so it was bouncing everywhere.
Do you know when I was writing that earlier on? I've watched that goal about 3 times. I was at Molineux with my dad. He says to this day. I mean, that drop of the shoulder. I've never seen Kelly move so quick. I've played a few charity games with him, and he wasn't that quick then.
He was one of the most underrated strikers we had at this club in my time. I thought he was brilliant to watch.
Good bloke.
Yeah, he's good. He does a bit for you, doesn't he, Daz, as well?
He does, yeah. He's a top man. Yeah, top man.
Let's move on to your questions. Each week before the show, I put some questions on. I asked you for questions on via the Wolves Report Facebook page and also my Twitter page. Just loads of questions. So apologies if I've missed them out. Now, the first one is quite it's quite in the news at the moment for the wrong reasons. And I thought it was something good to talk about. If you were a free agent Adama, would you go to La Liga in Spain next season? Now, for anyone that's not been aware of the news, a Real Madrid player was heavily racially abused terribly throughout the game away at Valencia. And there's video footage and the reaction from the league president is completely opposite to what you would think. So diabolical scenes, really. Really, really sad to see in the modern era. So I'll answer it quite quickly on that, and you guys can have your say on that. If I wouldn't know how Adama feels, but why would you want to go to Spain when that's happening? Because it's just unacceptable. So I think only Adama could answer that question. But I hope they put punishments in place to rectify that kind of stuff soon, because it's disgusting. Daz?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, how can we put ourselves in that mindset? I mean, there might be the sort of thing, well, I'm going to go and I'm not letting them beat me. I'm not letting them. But so I don't know. I mean, like it's just disgraceful. It shouldn't be going on. And they in this current day and age now, they've got all the video. They can see who it is. So don't just make token.
The videos are on Twitter. You can see yourself.
Just get them all then and ban them. But it's deplorable, and it's 2023 and we're still talking about this.
Yeah,
it's sick.
Horrible. Nocky?
It's just horrendous. I think the issue you've got, though, it's not just Spain, is it? If he goes to Italy, he's probably going to get the same sort of treatment. If you go to Holland, you're probably going to get the same sort of treatment. I think English football gets a real rough ride. But for me, I think it's probably the most accepting league and way of life, really, in European football, because it's, we some of the biggest court heroes we've had here, you don't look at the colour of their skin, but if you look at your Georgia Lacobes, you look at your Ebanks Blakes, Bakary Sacco, you never thought of these players as, I'm going to racially abuse him because he's missed a chance. They were one of us, weren't they? Same as everybody else, same as your Steve Balls, your David
called
Kellys.
Out now, doesn't it?
It gets called out, yeah. You do that.
Cowards on social media, but it gets called out at games. If anybody, I can't remember the last time I heard anybody say anything like that. But if they had done, then you wouldn't do it again. Somebody tell a steward or someone to put them straight. Thankfully,
we've got to grips with it in this country really well, and it's something that I would call it out if I heard it, because it's wrong. We all know it's wrong, and I think that we're very, very good at doing that in this country now. I think we do call it out, but unfortunately, the same rules don't apply abroad. And you heard the comments of the, I think it was the president of Spain, some of the stuff he was saying, which is just, how are you going to solve a problem like racism when you've got your leaders with that kind of opinion and thought process? So it's disgraceful, it's disgusting, but it's not going to go away, especially on mainland Europe, because Italy, Spain, France, you're going to get it across the board.
There's no repercussions. JD, thank you. I know it's a tough question. Thank you so much for putting on, because it's important to talk about stuff like that. So I really appreciate that putting forward. Moving on to back onto the questions. Richard, won't all our cash problems go away if we sell Neves, Guedes, Aït-Nouri? That should be about 40 million, 15, a total of 70, plus losing João, Raul, Guedes, Costa, and Neves wage. I think we covered that briefly earlier on. Obviously, I didn't know the conversation was going to go that way. But
just jump in, but also something that we haven't mentioned yet, and of course, if there's any, and I think you briefly mentioned actually, Nokia, and if there's any external investments as well, which the rumours have been rumbling on for a long time. I don't know if there's any. I've just heard the rumours, but if there was any, whether it's Saudi or Qatari or anybody came in and bought a stake in the club, then that too would change the landscape literally overnight, wouldn't it? So,
yeah, I mean, I know, as I mentioned, Craig Spiller put something really good out explaining sort of the basics of financial fair play in our situation, and I recommend anyone to have a look at that. On my Twitter page. But I don't think people here we're in trouble financial fair play and we get worried. I don't think it's as bad as there's a lot of scaremongering going on. Yeah. There'll be money to spend. I just don't think it's as much money as Lopetegui would have liked to have spent, and they want that sorting. So, Richard, thank you for your question. Really enjoying this question. Next one, by the way. Excuse me. Nocky, you can start off with this one. Chris Shiznal asks, do you think our midfielders will be too defensive next year with Boubacar Traore, Gomez, Nunes and Lamina?
Depends what we've got in front of them, and it depends what we do with Núñez. I think Lemina and Gomez are predominantly defensive midfielders. We know that. Núñez likes to get forward. We know he can do that. But I've got no issue with having holding midfielders. It's all about the players you've got in front of them. So on a 4-2-3-1, you can have your defensive line, you can have your two holders, and then everyone else really can attack, and you've got that support in front of your back four with those two. So I'm not really worried about it. I think defensively we've been relatively good. We haven't given too much away in recent weeks. It's up front that we're struggling. So if we get the attacking element of it right, then it really doesn't matter who we've got holding. And let's not forget they're two very, very good players, Gomez and Lemina. And with Núñez and the legs that he's got, I think we'll have plenty of opportunities for midfield. And some of the best performances we've had this season was without Neves when those two were in the team. So for me, no, I don't think we'll be too defensive with that.
I was really looking forward to answering that question until Nocky took all the best bits out of it.
Sorry.
Daz?
Yeah, I agree with Nocky, but also there's a lot to happen this summer. I mean, I'm guessing that they will, regardless of whoever the manager is and how much they will, the makeup of the squad and the balance of the squad needs to be realigned anyway. So we'd be very surprised if they didn't come into the new season with at least one proper creative player anyway, I'd have thought. I mean, they know what they need to do.
So if we did go into next season with those four, you think back to a year ago about, and no disrespect to Neves or Moutinho, how static our midfield is. This is a complete overhaul. There's four players there that can all go box to box and cover every blade of grass. And as Nocky suggested then, the 2.5 games we played without Neves, yes, we probably didn't have the range of passing, but the tempo in the first half at Leicester and the two home games prior to that, we look like a different side. And if that's the way to go forward with four athletic midfielders to choose from, I'm all for it. Thank you, Chris, for your question. Great question. Daz, you can have this one. Mike Allen asks, is simply staying in the Prem enough for Fosun? Oof.
Staying in the Prem, certainly vital for Fosun. I would say when you consider that they sacked Nuno because we finished, was it 10th or 11th? I would say no. I mean, obviously when they came in, there was the big talk then of like, we're going to be try and do what Manchester City did. And I'm sure they meant that 6-7 years ago, but the landscape again has changed so much. And now you need to, it's not about millionaires or multimillionaires. It's not even about billionaires now. There's countries owning football clubs now. But again, I think we've said this before, that it's the prestige thing that the better Wolverhampton Wanderers are doing, the more prestige there is around Fosun. And they've got their esports, and they've got the clothing range to do with Wolves, and they've got the record label to do with Wolves. All that only has prestige if Wolverhampton Wanderers are doing well. It's certainly worth sod all if they're a championship club. It goes overnight from Harrods to Brownhill's Market. You need to, so the higher up the club are doing, the better the club are doing, the more prestige there is to the whole brand and their portfolio. And again, they spent £100 million odd last summer. They spent another £80 million in January. They're ambitious, but I just think there's been an awful lot of bad decisions, not by one person, by collective people, which again may lead to changes at the top, possibly this summer as well.
You are listening and watching episode 65 of the Wolves Report. Club captain Mark Knott, BBC WM's Daz Hale, and myself, Ryan Lester, just going through your questions now. We're about 53 minutes in. Hope you are enjoying the show so far. Paul Nichols asks, would you keep Ruben for a further year but lose him on a free, or do you cash in now? Nocky?
I think with the situation we're in, we've got to cash in. We haven't got the financial resources to keep him now. He's on big money. He's one of our saleable assets. He's probably the one we get the most for. If we need to rebuild the squad, we need players in. I think I don't keep him. I'll let him go now.
Daz?
We owe him. I think he said he wants to play Champions League football. When the right bid didn't come in last summer, he never slapped a transfer request in. He never spat the dummy. He never played up. He just knuckled down, and he's at times dragged this team single-handedly through games. Certainly in the first half of the season. And again, he said, no, look, if the right bid don't come in, I'll love it here, I'll stop here. If the right bid does come in, I think we owe it to him now just to... it'd be great if it's not in England. I don't want to see him playing against us.
Yeah, agreed.
It'd be great. He deserves it now. Let him go, and if the right bid comes in, I think we owe it to him to let him go and fulfill his dream.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I just get the feel. Obviously, Mendes will have a say, but I can't see him going anywhere but Barcelona. And I think they'll say, well, you'll have to accept. They can't spend any money, so we're going to have to accept some kind of exploratory exchange. Now, people say, well, don't sell him then. Well, you risk losing him in a year then. And as Daz said, we kind of owe Ruben. He stayed on once. He has dragged Wolves for the last few seasons. There's a player that never hides. He gives everything. He's pressing, he's tackling. He wants it. That kid has given everything for this club. And I want him to go on, and I want him to win some major honours. I'd like him to win something with us, but at this moment in time, that's probably not realistic.
What I would say, is if he doesn't go this summer, and I think he will, I wouldn't be surprised if he then signed a contract just to
protect his value.
Get some money for him when he does go, with a get out clause, of like 20 million, or a bit lower than his market value or something. I don't know, but I think he'll go.
Yeah, it'd be sad to see him go, but we wish him well. But I've just got a feeling it'll be Barcelona. But Wolves need to be strong, and our dealings with Barcelona, and no disrespect to Nelson Semedo, but I think all the deals for Barcelona have been weighted in their favour, and we're yet to see the good side of any business we've done there. Obviously, Trincao and all that. It doesn't sit well, but I think Wolves will be forced into a corner there. But great question, Paul. Thank you very much. Moving on to the last question before we move on to Arsenal and the predictions. If J-Lo sticks around, will he have a say on how we sell Neves, i.e. cold, hard cash or player exchange? Nocky?
I mean, he'll have an opinion. He's going to want the money, isn't he? He's going to want to be able to reinvest the money. But the reality is, at some point, you have to make a business decision of, do we keep him or do we lose him for a free in 12 months, which it could potentially happen. So I think he'll have an opinion on it. But I think that, as you've quite rightly said, Wolves are kind of backed into a corner now that we may have to accept those players. I just hope he has a say on which players we bring in, and we're not just given, Barcelona offcuts which aren't good enough for them and aren't good enough for us. So yeah, I'm sure he'll have an opinion on it, but in terms of having an impact, I don't think he will.
Just to balance things on there, Nocky, and I would say some of Barcelona's offcuts would be good enough for us because they're going to win La Liga, and their standard of play is going to be better than ours. I don't want someone that's been in the reserves and never played.
You're right to a point, but Traore wasn't. I'd argue Semedo hasn't hit the levels that arguably we expected him to, and that his predecessor did. Any player who's good enough, who could be good enough for us, if they're going to give him to us for a free, for me, they've already identified that they're not going to achieve the level that they want them to at that football club. So for me, I think anything we get from them is not going to be what we need going forward. That's just my opinion. I'd love to be wrong, but I think Barcelona play a very nasty game when it comes to transfers. They kind of bully you and force you to accept what's coming. Yeah, and I don't. They won't release any players who they think are going to make it at Barcelona or are going to be remotely good enough to get a very large fee for in the future. So I think we'll end up getting the poor relations.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one. Sean, thank you so much for your question. On Sunday afternoon, we are heading down to the Emirates for the final game of the season, where Wolves take on Arsenal. Another day of goodbyes and farewells after Saturday's team selection. I'm not sure what to expect. I've got a feeling after what he said, though, we may see more involvement for Jimenez, and it feels somewhat an unwanted poetic end with obviously where his incident happened. That doesn't really sit well with me. I'm not sure he'd want to play there. I don't know. He might do. An opportunity to say goodbye to who knows what could happen. Daz, your take on what the manager should do with the team on Sunday?
Well, I think he should pick his best team. I'm not sure Arsenal will. It'll be very interesting if Ramsdale plays, the stick he'll be getting from the Wolves fans with everything that's gone on. But it's like, I mean, we'll have it live on WM, on DAB and Freeview 722. We've got the Villa game on FM. But it's meh, isn't it? I mean, again, when we were looking at the run-in, we were going, bloody hell, we don't want to have to go to Arsenal last game with them probably going to win the league and we'll need it. But it's all, we've put it to bed, they've blown it, and it's just, let's just get it out of the way now and draw a line under this season and never speak of it again.
Hopefully not. Nocky, anything to add before we go to the predictions?
No, I think Daz has covered it well. I think Arsenal will rest a few players. I think we'll go relatively strong, but I certainly expect to see Jimenez in the second half.
So then it's the final predictions of the season. I think Jackie's the only one so far. Didn't she get Nocky? She said Neves penalty and 1-0 earlier in the season. So we've had a few correct scores and a few there. But Daz, a chance to go joint top of the table with Jackie Oatley. Your first scorer and prediction for Arsenal v Wolves.
3-1 Arsenal.
Oh, you stinker.
Oh, I don't want it to be, but I'm just thinking, yeah. And the Wolves scorer will be Dawson.
Oh, nice. Look his face. Look, he's counting all his fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4.
3-0 Arsenal. Granit Xhaka with the opener.
Oh, what a horror show. What a lovely set of predictions. I'm not going to go with the Wolves thing because not even in my wildest dreams do I see that. But I'm going to go 3-2 Arsenal. Wolves take the lead. I'll say David Kelly. No, not really. And I keep saying it every week. We'll go with
Dawson.
that. Matthias Cunha.
That's the first time in 60 episodes you've gone for a Wolves defeat. You should be ashamed of yourself.
The end of the season. Get out of town. Okay, we'll go Arsenal 0, Wolves 14, just to appease Nocky. You watch Wolves win now, just to spite me. You have been watching and listening to episode 65 of the Wolves Report. Thank you so much to club captain Mark Knock, BBC WM's Daz Hale, who you can join on the football phoning for the final night on Thursday, Daz, of the season.
Tomorrow and Thursday, and that's
tomorrow and Thursday. And then Dad is off on holiday. By the look of what he was doing tonight, he's off to buy a vineyard. Hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll catch you with an end of season special when we talk about player departures, who to keep, who to sell, who to loan. And hopefully we'll have done that when the Lopetegui situation is resolved. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Up the Wolves.